Oscar Piastri took his maiden Formula 1 race win yesterday in Hungary and led home a McLaren 1-2 for the first time since Monza 21, their second since Canada 2010. The vibes around McLaren should have been something else, but they weren't, were they? Lando was given the undercut to protect against Lewis in P3, took the lead from Oscar once he pit and clearly did not want to give it back. Had McLaren and Norris just snatched his debut victory from the young Australian? Well, there was no rush to return that position, and with the anxiety real lap after lap of back and forth on the radio between Lando Norris and Will Joseph, eventually he did. Thing is, will McLaren come to regret that decision? Lando is Max's closest competitor in the Drivers' Championship after all. There is now a 76-point gap. It could have been a 69-point gap. Nice. My name's Tommo. Let's talk about it. For me, it comes down to a single fundamental question. Do you believe Max Verstappen has already won the 2024 Drivers' Championship, prior to this race at least, anyway? Not mathematically, of course, but realistically, do you think during this Hungarian Grand Prix, round 13 of 24, there was still a genuine Drivers' Championship going on? After the first 12, Lando Norris was sitting 84 points shy of Max Verstappen, and the 84-point gap with 12 races to go would mean Lando would need to average 7 points per weekend ahead of Max to get to the end of Abu Dhabi exactly level on points. What actually happened is Lando outscored Max by 8 points, P2 relative to P5. Could have been 15 points if Lando had held on to the win though. That would have reduced what is now a 76-point gap to a 69-point gap with 11 to go. McLaren are clearly in the constructors' fight and arguably the favourites now, right? 51 points behind Red Bull Racing, but Checo's struggling. This upgrade does not seem to have worked for Red Bull, at least in the short term. But what this weekend also tells us is that McLaren do not believe there's a Drivers' Championship battle going on, because otherwise they would have purposefully orchestrated the swap and allowed Lando to keep the position. Look, the Drivers' Championship matters most to the drivers, okay? The teams, sure, there's some benefit, and I would argue actually more benefit than they acknowledge in terms of eyeballs from the fans. We care more. The media cares more. I think sponsors looking in from the outside, they're going to be drawn more to a Drivers' Championship win than a Constructors. No one remembers that Ferrari won the Constructors in 2008 because Lewis won the Drivers' title. Now, obviously, Oscar had a scruffy start to the season through, I think, mainly bad luck. I don't think the gap to Lando, which is now 40 points, which was 47 prior to this race, was really representative of the difference in performance between the two. Lando has been better, granted, he's averaged out quicker in qualifying and has been better on the tyres, but it's been pretty marginal. But because of Oscar's slow start, he's now over 100 points behind Verstappen. No one would claim that Oscar Piastri is in a Drivers' Championship fight. The best he can do from a Drivers' Championship point of view is maybe beat Charles Leclerc to P3. But ultimately, if McLaren win the Constructors, whether Oscar finishes ahead or behind Charles won't matter at all to McLaren. The only Drivers' Championship position that actually matters is P1, whereas every Constructors' position actually, carries reward in terms of, again, prize money and ATR. It's logical to look at this as a missed opportunity for Lando Norris in the Drivers' Championship battle, especially with Max having a really scruffy one, finishing P5, only taking 10 points home. Lando surrendered 7 points to Oscar. It was fair. Would Schumacher do that? Would Senna have done that? Would Hamilton, would Vettel, multi-21, remember? Because thinking there is actually a Drivers' Championship fight going on might seem out of the question. However, McLaren look like they've got the quickest overall package right now. You've got Oscar up there as well, potentially taking points off of Max, and Checo not doing that because he's still struggling. And now this upgrade doesn't seem to have actually done anything to help performance. If anything, it might have actually sent Red Bull back a little bit. I made a video after round 7, Imola, discussing how I believed that was the first point in over, almost 2 years, that we actually had a Drivers' Championship fight. At that time, Verstappen was 48 points ahead of Charles Leclerc and 60 points ahead of Lando Norris. However, the top comment with over 1.3 thousand likes was, calling it a title fight is really far-fetched. Fast forward to today, Max is 76 points ahead of Lando Norris and 103 ahead of Charles Leclerc. Look, I don't realistically think, without the benefit of hindsight, anyone can really begrudge McLaren for going into this weekend and prioritising the overall team result ahead of any individual point scoring for Lando Norris, even though he's second in the driver's title, because of the size of that gap, 84 points. I mean, even after the 1-2 in qualifying, you know, it's the 4th longest run to turn 1 in Hungary. Max is great off the starts. Like, holding on to that 1-2 was the priority, no matter what order they were going to be in. Look, if this sport was a bunch of robots, there was no fans, there was no media, there was no PR, and you've got two drivers, one who's further ahead in the Drivers' Championship and has that potentially, a long shot, but potentially to fight for, and the other who isn't, you would swap the positions. You would keep Lando Norris ahead. You would score the same number of Constructors' points, but you would score more Drivers' Championship points for Lando Norris. However, that is not the case. This is a human sport, and it's a matter of weighing up, is it worth it? McLaren clearly went into this race, rightly or wrongly, under no kind of impression that there was a Drivers' Championship fight going on. So when Lando found himself behind Oscar, great move from Oscar Piastri, taking that win away from Oscar, his inaugural win in F1 as well, his first ever win, that would have been a huge call that Oscar would have been absolutely heartbroken about. And like, is it worth it in the grand scheme of things? When you've not agreed to that beforehand, when you've not agreed that whatever happens, if you can prioritise Lando, you must prioritise Lando because of a Drivers' Championship fight going on. Like, if that's the order from McLaren, then fair enough, but that wasn't the order from McLaren. Yet again, now with hindsight, looking back, it's like, wow, with Max blowing up the way he did, the tone of voice he was speaking about the team. Look, Max is known to blow up on the radio. This isn't the first time, it won't be the last, but the frustration, the extremity of frustration, I think it had a negative effect on his performance. I don't think he's sending it so aggressively and making contact with Lewis if he's not fuming in that moment. Maybe it's a one-off bad day for Red Bull. Okay, Spa is like their best track. Okay, so I firmly expect Max to at least be on the podium around there, even if he's not completely happy with his car. But you know, 11 races to go, that's 310 points if you win 11 Grand Prix, all 3 sprint, and get all 11 fastest laps. It's mathematically possible, but is it worth compromising the morale of Piastri and creating this kind of PR disaster that, well, McLaren were very much responsible for that, even more so with their action, for the sake of a proper long shot on the title? That's the debate. Look, the fundamental logic does check out for why they pitted Lando first. Okay, the car behind. He was 2 seconds behind Oscar Piastri, was told to come in on lap 46. A decision made to cover Lewis Hamilton, who pitted 5 laps prior on lap 41 onto fresh, hard tyres. It was a undercut reaction. Okay, that gap between Lando and Lewis before Lewis came in was about 10 seconds. After Lando came out, it was about 4.5. If Lando had stayed out for an extra lap and allowed Oscar to come in first, you know, would that gap have come down even more? Would Lewis have jumped Lando? If McLaren had a bad pit stop, maybe, but it would have taken a serious cock up. It was a very conservative call, and when you look at the end of the race where, you know, Lando finished like 20 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton. Obviously Lewis was scrapping Max and lost time there, but you got to say McLaren pitting Lando onto, you know, fresh mediums as well. I think he would have just breezed past Lewis, even if Lewis had undercut him around a difficult to overtake track like Hungary. So as it played out, Lando had a 2.3 second pit stop, Oscar a 2.9, both sub 3 seconds is kind of the average you should ask and expect from your team. But yeah, Oscar went from being 2 seconds ahead of Lando to coming out of the pits about 2.5 seconds behind. What was weird though is that they actually gave Lando 2 laps of undercut on Oscar. They pitted Lando on 46, or at least he came out on lap 46, and Oscar came out on lap 48. I do wonder, I don't know if there's a clear answer, not that I've seen. Maybe they were worried about Oscar's tyre management, which again has been his Achilles heel, broadly speaking, over his time alongside Lando. If they'd have boxed him straight away, they probably would have been pretty much neck and neck coming out of the pits. Maybe that was what they wanted to avoid, I guess? I'm not sure. The 1-2 was now secure. McLaren, from a constructor's point of view, had done their job. But of course, they had now created this awkward situation where you're asking a driver who's second in the Drivers' Championship to give up P1, give up their second ever win in Formula 1 for their teammate, right? A driver in Lando Norris who's been slandered with no wins for the longest time, missed out on great opportunities to win in Canada, Austria, Silverstone, definitely on for a win in all of those 3. That goes against every instinct in what it is to be a driver, and you're asking Lando to make a very difficult call in the kind of heat of a driving moment, and be a team player or concede position. Optics wise, it's a lose-lose, because well, if you concede the position, there'll be people like, oh, Max would have never done that, Schumacher, Senna, they would have never done that. Lando doesn't have the mentality for this, he can't be a true champion if he's going to give positions away, and vice versa. If he holds on to the position, you're going to people, oh, he's selfish, he's only taking care of himself, it's going to destabilise the team, it's going to make what has up to this point been a really strong and balanced, respectful team partnership, bringing it into disarray through his own selfishness. Like, it's a lose-lose that they put him in. McLaren put him in that position. Like, what would you do? I did my live stream last night, Australian time, of course, and I asked the question, and the poll, it was about 50-50, almost exactly down the middle. Who would give up position? Who would do what Lando actually did do and rescind, or hold on to it and be selfish and be, uncompromising, like so many of the greatest of all times have been? McLaren have stuck a medium rare, perfectly seared Wagyu steak right in front of Lando's nose, and they're asking him to give it back. I know he wouldn't do that. This guy right here, trust me, if there was a steak right in front of his nose, that would be gone. You would not be selfless in that moment, would you, Minton? No, you wouldn't. I also think McLaren's lack of assertiveness did not help the situation either. Saying to Lando, re-established the order at your convenience, when Oscar came out behind him, was a poor choice, in my opinion. I actually think if they'd have just said, swap the positions back straight away, that is an order, but you are free to fight for the win, I think Lando would have been much more receptive to that. I could be wrong, but I think he would be. His pace was seemingly a bit stronger than Oscar's at the end, so I think he would have been in with a shot. It's difficult to overtake around Hungary, but he would have had DRS most likely, and Oscar wouldn't have. And you know what? If Lando takes that win from Oscar, but actually takes it by fighting on track and passing him for the lead, fine, that's cool. Like, okay, yeah, Oscar doesn't get his first win, but fair enough. Like, Lando's second in the Drivers' Championship. I don't think anyone realistically, without their biases, would actually begrudge Lando for going for the win and doing it on track and actually getting it stuck because you're the quicker driver. But yeah, give the position back, because the only reason you've got it in the first place is because we're protecting the 1-2 for the team. That checks out. However, that's not how McLaren managed it, and wow, these were some of the most out-of-pocket team radios I ever remember hearing in Formula 1. These ones will go down as all-timers, like the "you raced me too hard" from back in the day, which still haunts me, Alex. Was Lando always going to let Oscar back past anyway? Was he just having a bit of fun? Like remember when Bottas took that fastest lap? I think it was around Zandvoort in 21, wasn't it? And he was just like, oh, I'm just having a bit of fun. Or like Jonathan Wheatley, moaning to the FIA, Michael Massey in Abu Dhabi 21. Did that actually change what Michael Massey would have just done anyway? Like, we will never know. Correlation doesn't necessarily equal causation. Maybe Lando was always going to give it back. He didn't want to, because of course he doesn't want to. Like, obviously. Yet if Will, Joseph and McLaren actually believed he would, then they wouldn't have been absolutely pestering him with these radio messages for that entire final stint, pretty much. Look, these messages are public and they know it. They know the race director is going to lap it up and broadcast all these messages. They know that gives the media, the fans, people like me, something not so positive to talk about. They're telling him he's being too hard on his tyres, which I don't think was true. I just think that's just a round the houses way of telling him to slow down. Dropping just crazy lines like, oh, I know you'll do the right thing. Damn, appealing to the emotion much. Look, I've made a whole video on McLaren communication issues, right, since Silverstone, Will Joseph and Lando Norris, and I didn't expect it to rear again so suddenly, but also in such a different context, I guess. The accusation of gaslighting on Twitter was very strong towards McLaren. I mean, to define gaslighting is to manipulate someone using psychological methods into questioning their sanity or own powers of reasoning. Let's just play those radio messages now, and then you can make your own minds up.
And Lando, we still think you're using the tyres too much. Turn 4, turn 11, and the rear's exit. Turn 6, turn 9. Oscar's 3.5. I know you'll do the right thing. Turn 4, turn 11. It's going to get boring. Lando, he can't catch you up. You've proved your point, and it really doesn't matter.
He's on much bigger size. Don't trust you. He's still it.
I promise, I'm trying to protect you. And Lando, there are 5 laps to go. The way to win a championship is not by yourself, it's with the team. You're going to need Oscar and you're going to need the team.
The way they handled this back and forth was terrible. I think it was objectively terrible. This is how I would have done it though. I'm not just going to complain and say they did it wrong. I think they could have done it in a much better, more concise, more measured way. First, like I already said, be assertive with your driver. Tell Lando he needs to give back the position and that it is an order. If he wants to fight Oscar for the win, fine, let it. Trust your drivers, right? I would have said, you're ahead solely because we boxed you first to protect the team 1-2. Now that is done, return the position to Oscar. That is an order. You're then free to race him for the win. Copy, you understand this message. And if Lando comes back and starts complaining, just reply, copy, you understand the message. Then I'd just leave it. Each lap, as each lap comes, I'd be like, all right, 7 laps to go, 6 laps to go, 5 laps to go. Once you get to like 3 laps to go, and Lando still hasn't given the position back, which again, I think he probably already would have if you're allowed to fight for the win, just give him the position back straight away. But let's say he hasn't, then just say, you've got 3 laps left to carry out the order. Simple, leave it at that. You don't need to say anything more than that. Lando knows what he needs to know, and then it's up to him to make that decision. If he doesn't do it, he'll have to face the music and he'll have to sit with the decision that he's chosen to make that many other drivers would have made as well. This is cutthroat, this is high pressure, this is top tier motorsport, and Lando needs to decide the driver that he wants to be. But instead of that, it's messy, it's awkward, it massively takes the shine off of Oscar's debut win in Formula 1. It certainly plants seeds of doubt and insecurity, I think, in Lando Norris. And yes, somehow McLaren have managed to get 1-2, which is a dub, and somehow turn it into an L. I mean, the fact in my stream they won Banger Team and Clanger Team speaks volumes, because that never happens. Will Lando and McLaren look back on these 7 points surrendered to Oscar Piastri with regret by the time we get to Abu Dhabi? Let me know what you think in the comments below. What would you have done? My name's Tommo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.